Thursday evening, show number 137 or 138. Welcome to an Over the Hump Day edition, as we had a special assignment to cover yesterday. Another pot full of goodness with our staff of resident chefs at Soul Tree Radio in the Raw. I'm your host, Michael Lewis Ingram, DJ Honeycomb, and as always, it is good to have you in the house this evening. A whole lot of stuff to get to, so we are running through our intro as quickly as possible. Soul Tree Radio in the Raw, sponsored by the Black Athlete Sports Network, Roland Rogers, CEO in loving memory, our friends at Blog Talk Radio, our friends and colleagues at WCLM 1450 AM, the soul of Richmond, Virginia. Cowboy Reggie will be riding in very soon, along with the rest of our staff of chefs, our colleagues at WUFO 1080 AM, The Mix in Buffalo, New York, where Pat Freeman, the mighty Oba, does a great job doing his part to try to bring gainful employment to the residents of Western New York through the new stadium deal and the interesting encounters he's had along the way, as well as our friends at Guardian Caps, Leonard Hansen, Mike Feely, looking to do their part to protect athletes of all ages. And my friend and colleague, Anthony Johnson, who is dark tonight, but as always, we were 9 to 11, and we are normally on with our Hump Day special, 9 to 11. So we said last week, listen to Anthony, and when you're not listening to Anthony, listen to us, and download us when you're not listening to the other show. Got that? Good. Okay, now having said all of that, we want to get to our menu because we have a lot to get to. On the menu, firstly, on Turntable One, we are going to be talking about the hacker who you guys have as being under the banner of the group Anonymous, but his real name is Derek Lockstutter. And Derek is a hero in this person's humble opinion. He was the gentleman who, through his hacking, was able to expose all the information regarding what happened in Steubenville, Ohio, when that young lady was violated to the level that she was, and that the young men who violated her are only going to do a year or two in jail at the most. Now, because of Anonymous's participation in bringing these pricks to justice, apparently Mr. Lockstutter possibly may do as much as 10 years in jail. Now, remember, he did 10 years for hacking. These little punks are going to get 2 years tops for raping a woman. I don't need to stutter on that one. So clearly something's wrong here, and there may be underlying issues regarding Anonymous because of something that happened in conjunction to a young lady in Canada named Rehtaeh Parsons, who is no longer with us because she was bullied after being raped and shamed in public media and eventually forfeited her life. The group Anonymous threatened to help, and I'm putting that in quotes, the Canadian government to expedite their actions, and of which they did nothing until Anonymous spoke up about it. So we know hacking can be dangerous, but this was something that was done to protect someone from being bullied and also to bring criminals to justice. So where do you sit on this, guys? This is something we want to throw in the pot and get some opinion on. Also, as we are running through our menu, we know that the Jay-Z effect is affecting sports all around. He's picked up several major athletes in some of the major sports. Robinson Cano, he's been sniffing around the Eagles' Deshaun Jackson, and now he has secured Kevin Durant under the Roc Nation banner. What does this do? Is David Stern going to piss a bitch? We don't know. But the bottom line is clearly Jay-Z, because he has no financial axe to grind because he got his own money, might be a major player here, and it may raise the hackles of some of the sports establishment because, again, he can come in on his own. On Turntable 3, we're going to have what we call the spelling bee. Now, let's get to the point here where the puritanical side of the society's influence is driving me knuckin' futs. When I say this, I mean, when I'm seeing posts on social media as well as regular media, now they're trying to be cute with tragedies. One post showed how a woman had been raped, but instead of just spelling a word out, they spelled it with an @ sign instead of the A. Another one used the term where someone was using their penis and used an exclamation point instead of the I. Now, there's something very wrong with this because you're demonizing these words, and even though the word may have a certain meaning to it, what makes you think that not writing the word out is going to make it any less demonic? It's stupid. And on top of everything else, it's setting up a sub-level of censorship where it goes in tune with the type of stuff that, our parents might have heard when they were kids where, don't play with yourself, you'll go blind. Or, if you kiss a boy, you'll get pregnant. That kind of shit. And these are the type of things that we need to avoid if we are looking to evolve. But as we go in here, the thing that bothers me most, and I talked about public shaming just a second ago, I have to bring this up before we get into the schools and jail stuff. This fantastic kid named Sebastian de la Cruz, who was a mariachi singer who was thrust into the national spotlight on the show America's Got Talent a year or so ago, was singing the national anthem at Game 3 of the NBA championships, down in San Antonio when the Spurs took on the Heat. Now, normally it's like that shouldn't be a big deal. Celebrities of every stripe have attempted to sing our national anthem. Having lived in Canada 12 years, I know they have to sing it every time they deal with us when we're playing hockey or basketball or Canadian football, whatever. But the long and short of it is, okay, it's a song most folks aren't going to get their nose bent out of joint for singing. So this young kid sings it beautifully, by the way. And as we see, the assholes come out everywhere. I'm going to read some of these so that you see just exactly what we're talking about here. These are tweets. And the reason I did this is because a while back when we did a story about John Calipari and his carpetbagging ways coming to the University of Kentucky, our website at blackathlete.com was besieged. They tried to bomb us with all kinds of viruses and crazy shit because of an article that was written called "The Devil and His Wife Are Now Together," and it was referring to Calipari and the Dick Dastardly stuff that he was doing in bouncing from University of Massachusetts to Memphis University and then to Kentucky. So we had all these rednecks and racists sending on all kinds of crazy shit. Niggas die, bomb threats, all kinds of shit. So what we did was I made a series of columns about them called "With Love from Kentucky," and we put their ass out on blast. And a couple of them got in trouble because they were stupid enough, first of all, to use their real names, and then, it cascaded from there. As my colleague Gary Norris Gray is in the mix. But again, regarding this young kid who sang the Star Spangled Banner, I want to put some of these things out on blast. I'm reading the names, and I want to read their tweet addresses too, you dumb sons of bitches. So, from Jack Wadham, hold on, G. Let me get him. Okay. From Jack Wadham, whose handle is Wadden, WADDN 23. Quote, "What's up with this little Mexican kid singing the anthem at the Heat game?" From Francois at A2DAO. "This little Mexican snuck in the country like 4 hours ago. Now he's singing the anthem. Dumb motherfucker." Another one, Ben Koch, spelled Koeck, at Gordon_Bombay 24. Okay, yeah, Mighty Ducks, forget you. "This kid is Mexican. Why is he singing the national anthem? Hashtag, you're not American. Hashtag, go home." TJ the DJ, more like TJ the asshole. "Who that little wetback sang in the national anthem at the Heat game?" Another one, the Great White. "Can't believe they had the nerve to have a beaner sing the national anthem of America." Yeah. They're just losing their fucking mind, G. And another one, Dominic DiGregorio, in this winter. 9 out of 10 chance that kid singing national anthem is illegal. Stephen David, is this the American national anthem with a Mexican hat dance? Get this little kid out of here. And Grace Kelly, that's their name on the, I got nothing to do with that. Grace Kelly says, "I'm highly upset that this kid is singing the United States national anthem, clearly from Mexico." Now, there's a whole bunch more of these, but I just wanted to give you guys a few, as again, my colleague Gary Norris Gray is in the mix. G, we know there's the old saying about better to keep quiet and don't let everybody know that you're an asshole than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Well, a whole lot of doubt just got removed right here. So, so let me know how you really feel, brother.
But this is the problem with the whole thing. What wrestling ball and those guys, the right wing media blast, they allow these fools to get big-headed. They allow these fools to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Now, years ago, it never happened. But because of the internet, because of Twitter, Facebook, all that kind of stuff, they can say stuff, and then nobody's gonna get them. So what you did just now was perfect. For my own class, you did this. Here's your name, your number, here's your email, and all this stuff. Because if you're caught red-handed, it stops.
Yeah. You would think it would stop, Gary, but we know we remember that from the Kentucky stuff. Some of these folks were just so ignorant that they really didn't have a clue that, okay, fine, until you actually saw it in print. Well, I didn't really mean to say that. Well, you shouldn't have said it then, you stupid son of a bitch. And this.
I had the same example of me going to high school in Idaho, in Northern Idaho.
Oh, I remember that. That was the suing incident. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, why are you calling your name savages? And they cut me out, man.
Well, people will do what they need to do to back up their own insecurities. And as I have you on here for this, let's fast forward to something that you brought up a couple of shows ago, because now that ripple's starting to gain a few waves. Yep. I don't know if it was the letter you sent him, G, but for those who don't know, Brother Gray is he's got Lenape in his background as far as being Native, and the issue of Washington's football team has always been a sore spot with him and with me as well. But Mr. Gray has been on this doggedly, and now another high school changed their name from the R word so that they could not necessarily conform, but in sympathy of the respect factor regarding Washington's football team. Yep. Now, as a counter to that, NFL Commissioner Goodell goes to Washington for the express purpose of saying, well, that R word really doesn't mean what it means, So, he goes and testifies before Congress, for lack of a better way of putting it, to say, well, that really doesn't mean that. So, why don't you guys just lay off Daniel Snyder? Essentially, that's what he's saying, as he's running interference for Snyder. But when he comes there and says it means noble fighting spirit, I want to know, I'm asking you as a Native brother, how many other Native brothers and sisters do you know believe that word means that your noble fighting spirit is being recognized?
But see, what Goodell did was what most upper-class white people do. They put a name on it. They put a name on the group. Put a name on it. They execute. Yeah. Like Sambo. Sambo wasn't a black name. That's a white person they called somebody Sambo.
Right.
Okay. So what they did was they called Redskin, and then they cute. It's not cute. It's not pretty. And the Goodell tried to slide by because he wanted to help his better brother owner Snyder. It ain't gonna work. The Redskin name is going down because.
Well, I already know that the concept behind the name we know is bad enough and whatnot, and we know it's pejorative. However anybody wants to slice it, it's pejorative, and we're not going to go into the issue of, well, it could be the New York niggas, the Kansas City kikes, the Washington wops, or any other thing like that. The issue is, it's like, okay, we're just like, we can do this because they're powerless. We don't give a rat's ass about what they're thinking, and this is privilege on steroids, that they can say these things and do these things with impunity, and nobody will hold them accountable. And people are not going to stop buying their merchandise, which is unfortunate, because I think if there was a drop in their merchandise, their bottom line would make them pay attention. But again, it's a reciprocal respect factor. Why would you spend your money and cheer for a team that's essentially calling you nigger from the essence of what their nickname means?
No, what Niner need to know is what we need to do as I'm saying to Soul Patrol and the Gold Caravan people next year. I want you to go outside if you can do this. Go outside Washington Stadium and make your voice heard this year, right? Because the louder we say no, the more pressure we put on the Niner and the NFL to change the name.
Yes, indeed.
You need to write letters to Washington Football Club. You need to write letters to Roger Goodell. The more we do this, the more they look. In 1982, there were 5,000 high schools with that name. In 2013, there are only 55.
See, people are understanding it. It means something now. But I have to touch on something else, Gary, because when I started this day, as we were putting the show together, I ran into several columns, information that came out over cyberspace that led me to this one path regarding kids and the prison system. Now, we know that kids are being led literally to prison. And when you get evidence of these things, you're thinking, okay, we need some outrage here. I mean, this isn't something that just started overnight or anything like this. This has been ongoing. And we've got major situations right now in Chicago and in Philly particularly. In Chicago, 54 schools are being closed, 53 elementary schools and one high school. And in the mix of all of this, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, that son of a bitch, is trying to put out any notions that, there's nothing going on, there's no conspiracy, because, and by the way, I need to have a stadium built for DePaul University, DePaul, which was part of the Big East before it all separated. So now all the Catholic Jesuit schools or whatever have formed a new conference. And, for that TV money, they need a new facility to sit some Heine's in. Now, never mind that this will be done at the expense of X numbers of schools. And when we look at Chicago's situation in particular, we can't speak on whether or not they haven't tried to do anything because teachers went out on strike. There were, I believe, local politicians that spoke up in defense of the whole schools issue. But you're weighing all this stuff together. Hold on a second, G. You're weighing all this stuff together, and you're like, well, where is the federal intervention? Where is anybody to come out on local news or major mainstream media and say, there's something major going on in Chicago. Why shouldn't we all be alarmed because it's gonna happen in our city next if it's not happening already?
Well, it's like we are undereducating our kids. When you undereducate a population, what happens to that population? It disappears. We have to educate our children. And what Rahm Emanuel is doing is just demasculating the African American community. And we have the people that say, okay, enough. We need education to get further. This is totally insane.
This is not insane. Now, see, hold on, guy, because this ain't insane. This is fiendishly evil and fiendishly not even clever. Clever is the wrong word to use here, but it's part of an intent on a society to further separate the have and have not. And let's not even get to the color. This is not a color issue now. Now this is about those that have and those that don't, and who intends to keep it that way. We already know in Pennsylvania, in particular, Pennsylvania, 2 judges are sitting doing time, 7 years each, and they're probably doing it in Club Fed for setting up a situation where they had kids arrested for minor infractions, bullshit like, shoplifting something here or creating a fuss in public or something like that. And they're being thrown in jail. They're being thrown in jail because the 2 judges who are funneling kids to this penal institution, they want to call it it's a fucking penal institution. They sent them to this institution in Pennsylvania, ruined their lives, affected them mentally in God knows how many ways, and at the end of it all, these 2 judges only confessed because there was so much heat coming at their ass that they couldn't deflect it anywhere else. It was later revealed that they were silent partners in putting together the prison. Now, this isn't the first time we brought this up, but we need to illustrate just how widespread this issue is. Now, I want to touch on something, as I know you're doing your thing on the lane here.
I gotta go, right?
Go ahead, brother. You go ahead. And as I'm picking up on this, I want to go to a spot that was popped in by The Guardian, which is out of the UK. Now, it's funny that whenever I wanted to really watch news, I knew I couldn't watch local news or any mainstream news. The closest real news I could ever get was from the BBC feeds. So BBC Radio would be the one that was perfect, and that would be the one where you'd probably get more pertinent information about our own damn country than we'd get here. And having said that, this piece came in from off the Guardian website, and it is talking about how America's emphasis on private prison system is a national disgrace. The privatization of traditional government functions and big government payments to private contractors isn't limited to international intelligence operations like the National Security Agency. It's happening with little oversight in dozens of areas once the province of government, from schools to airports to the military. The shifting of these government responsibilities to private actors isn't without any consequences. Privatization often comes with a lack of oversight and a series of major abuses. One particularly stunning example is what's going on in our prison system here, the realities of which should be a national disgrace. A recent lawsuit filed by the American Civil Liberties Union on behalf of prisoners at the East Mississippi Correctional Facility is what's on the table here. Apparently, EMCF houses severely mentally ill prisoners with the supposed intent of providing both incarceration and treatment. Instead, according to the ACLU's contention, the facility, which is operated by private contractors, is rife with horrific abuses. Their quote, an extremely dangerous facility operating in a perpetual state of crisis, where prisoners live in barbaric and horrific conditions and their basic human rights are violated daily. This complaint lists a litany of such horrors, but here are some highlights. Rampant rapes, placing prisoners in solitary confinement for weeks, months, or even years at a time, where the only way to get a guard's attention in an emergency is to set a fire. Rat infestation so bad that vermin crawl over prisoners. Sometimes the rats are captured, put on leashes, and sold as pets to the most severely mentally ill inmates. Many suicide attempts, some successful. The untreated mentally ill throw feces, scream, start fires, electrocute themselves, and self-mutilate, denying or delaying treatment for infections and even cancer, stabbings, beatings, and other acts of violence. Juveniles being housed with adults, including one 16-year-old who was sexually assaulted by his adult cellmate. Malnourishment and chronic hunger, officers who deal with prisoners by using physical violence. These are just some of this long list of complaints. And it's scary to think just what level these people have gone to in order to perpetuate this climate of violence and perpetuate a climate of, unfortunately, indentured servitude. Some people want to call it slavery, but if you've got kids and you're putting in their minds early that there aren't but so many ways for you to get out of this mess, eventually they're going to get cornered. 3 or 4 shows ago, we brought up the issue of kids graduating and how graduation celebrations were ruined because of administrative terrorism. When you see your kid graduating and you think that they've achieved something after going through whatever they had to go through to get that diploma, and then a kid sees their mom taken out in handcuffs, or they see that the kid is denied the diploma because, well, you cheered too loud. That was one excuse used in Cincinnati for a kid who had graduated last year. So because you cheered too loud, no diploma for you, and in order to get your diploma, you will have to serve 20 hours of community service. We talked about a couple of shows ago, a young lady in Florida who is part Native, wore a feather to recognize her heritage. And after they were warning people not to adorn their caps and gowns with anything, she wore the feather in her hair. So it wasn't on her cap or gown. She still had to pay a $1,000 fine to get her diploma. Now, her family had the money. She said it was worth every dollar and whatnot, but it was private school. Can you imagine what public schools are doing? This is some scary premise here we're talking about. Ultimately, you're going to have kids in all kinds of dangerous situations because the walls are closing in on them. What happens when you can't even celebrate that moment of joy, that moment of achievement? Or, even worse, what happens when things that would require you to just, be sent down to the principal or, a kind of detention or something like that is now being bypassed because, and the logic of administration is, there's zero tolerance policy in effect. So because of this zero tolerance, we're going to bypass this talking to and send you straight to jail. It's happening in Texas right now as we speak. As a matter of fact, in Texas, it is so bad. People are getting arrested. Young people are being arrested for not attending school. Now, we're not talking truancy. We're talking incarceration to such a degree that now their records are going to be put in effect. They will not be able to get jobs, good jobs. Their possibilities of higher education will be hampered. If I'm reading the rulings right, and I read the piece on Texas and the fact they're sentencing kids for missing school, then ultimately they won't be able to vote. So these kids are being cycled into a permanent underclass. Now, whenever you hear those words, permanent underclass, you always thought, well, you're talking about people on welfare or the untouchables over in India or something like that. Well, a caste system has been here for a long time now. I can say for at least the 12 years where austerity was going everywhere else and started to creep its way to the United States, it's been on its way. And now it is here in full force. So you have kids in Texas understanding that, well, you better go to school every day, but not so much because you want an education, not because they want to even give you an education, because if your ass isn't in school, we're going to arrest you. That puts a different vibe on things rather than, be good or whatever. If a kid misses a day of school, because if I read the Texas piece right, 10 days is the limit or something like that. So what if you get the chicken pox and you have a doctor's note or something of that effect? Or if you have the flu and you're sick? These things accumulate and add up. Just the premise of thinking, okay, one day you don't show up for school, make it a couple days. Could be family emergency, could be just about anything. And the next thing you know, they're arresting you. And they're making you pay fines upon release. This is the mindset that leads to the debtors' prisons that were in effect in the 1800s, where people couldn't pay their bills. They threw them in jail. Not because they had committed any major crimes or murdered anybody or anything like that. They put them in jail. There's something upsetting about this because no one is making any noise. No one is saying anything. What is the premise of a future for a young person if they're just thrown in a jail in general population and they're subject to the things that could happen as what was described in this 16-year-old situation in this jail in Mississippi? Now, as I go back to that, some numbers you guys need to know. Since 1980, the U.S. prison population has grown by 790%. America, no surprise there, we're number one, has the largest prison population of any nation in the history of the world. 1 in 3 African-American men will go to jail at some point in his life. Imprisoning that many people, most of them for nonviolent offenses, doesn't come cheap, especially when you're paying private contractors. Right now, the United States is spending somewhere in the realm of $50 billion. $50 billion on our correction system every year. And, of course, much of that money goes to private contractors who are getting over like fat rats in a cheese factory living off American corporate welfare at the expense of us as taxpayers whose dollars are funding this mass incarceration project. Philadelphia is a prime example. 23 schools on the chopping block. Sonic Sherial talked about this for a while, and as I come into Philly's situation, I want to bring in my friend and colleague who normally would be on right now. He does an excellent job with his show on Blog Talk, Brother Anthony Johnson. Brother, good evening.
Hey, good evening, sir. How are you?
Hanging in there, brother. As you see, we got a lot to chop at here because this is some scary stuff we're talking about.
Absolutely.
The system, this is beyond endemic. We know there's an intent to this that is designed to not just put heinies in jails and put hots in cots and stuff, but it's designed to break spirit. The same way slaves on the plantation were told to pick that cotton and overseer crack that whip, everybody gets back to work. No reprisals, no approval, no self-worth, no nothing. Their souls are being stolen by these actions, Anthony. And I know you've been on this, talking about this on your show, and I'd just like for you to elaborate a little bit on this.
No, what's going on, Michael, is that America's penal system is a cash cow. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been given outstanding statistics, and there are other people that also give great stuff. Jimmy Stevens, he was on the show a few weeks back. 2010, 2 private prisons made $2 billion, and that's ridiculous. That's the new form of slavery.
Yeah.
You got a governor here in Philadelphia. I don't know if you watch Out with Chris Hayes, but he had Mayor Nutter on there a couple of days ago, and he took him to the woodshed because they were talking about how this Governor Corbett, candidly speaking, the worst governor this Commonwealth has ever had. And that's saying a lot because we've had some pretty bad governors in the past. He is definitely number one. And Chris Hayes also took the moment to say that, this guy is he called him his dark horse as the worst governor in Pennsylvania right now. Mm-hmm. But, here's a man who spends $400 million to build a prison, but made sure that these schools didn't get any funding to continue to move forward. Not only that, but no funding for resources. And then Mayor Nutter was on his show trying to, join the beatdown, if you will, of Governor Corbett's failed policies, which all of them have been failed policies. But Chris Hayes stopped him and said, whoa, hold on. Mayor Nutter, you approved the closing of these 23 schools. You support the SRC. So he was trying to, pull that stunt again about, it's a complicated issue. No, it's not. And Chris Hayes was letting know it's not complicated. You support this ideology of closing schools. And most importantly is that it's not so much as it's not only that you're closing all these schools, but you're also not investing any type of resources for these kids. Next week, these kids in Philadelphia are done for the summer. They don't have any jobs. They don't have any recreation places. We have, according to Alan Vukovich, the city controller, he said the rec centers in Philadelphia are the most horrendous, the most horrible rec centers possibly on the planet. So our kids don't have anywhere to go. So what do you think is going to happen? And the penal system says we don't have to do anything except just watch them come in. We don't even have to no longer go out and get them. We just open the gates and they'll fall into them. And that's what's happening here in Philadelphia.
It's disgusting, Anthony. I was going to get some wisdom from the chat room. The issue I just spoke of in Mississippi, as well as part of what's going on in Tennessee, according to the chat room, the parents must have a doctor's note or they go to jail, and the child is placed in a juvenile facility. We're talking about the state of Texas arresting kids for not attending school. But we're not talking about like a juvenile system or truancy court where they get fined or something. We're talking about throwing them in jail. So, of course, their lives are ruined from the very beginning because they don't realize that they can't vote, at least in Texas, once they come out of that. And many of them are thrown in for trumped-up charges or because the attorney plea bargain from them, bargains them into a short sentence, and now they're labeled as ex-cons and they can't get work. So it's a vicious cycle, and this is deliberate. There's no vacillation about trying to describe the effect of all of this. Because cumulatively, like you said, it's going to be a hot summer, brother. Those kids who normally would be maybe working minimum wage jobs or something, or having something to do at a rec center, they have nothing. It's like watching that Monopoly board, Anthony. Then you know when the Monopoly board is laid out there, you have all these options, and when you turn up the card and one card says go to jail, do not pass go, that whole deck, whether it's the community chest or the other one, now they're filled with go to jail cards, and the kids realize no matter what they roll, somehow their behinds are going to end up in jail. And
at some point,
where's the outrage? Yeah, I talked about how Chicago was trying to do something about the school situation, but I don't hear any noise coming out or any actions coming out from Philly community leaders to say enough and say, wait a minute, y'all can't get away with this nonsense. Because Corbett, I think one reason why he's doing a lot of this, Anthony, is because he's trying to eliminate any possible blowback from the Penn State situation. Because remember, he was Attorney General when all that stuff with Sandusky went down, and I haven't seen any major newspaper or TV concern, electronic or otherwise media, speak on this or do any sort of in-depth journalism on this. The only one that's been closest to saying anything is one out there in Altoona, PA. Other than that, Corbett has been getting over like a fat rat because no one has tied him to this. But you better believe he's connected to this because Second Mile Organization donated $200,000 to his campaign. So where is the journalists on the Party Inquirer and other entities to speak on this? I'm sorry.
Well, Altoona talked about it, you talked about it, and I talk about it. Other than that, it appears that's where it stops at. You've talked about it. The paper in Altoona, Pennsylvania has talked about it. I've talked about it several times on the show, that how was it that this guy was the Attorney General at the time? And then, a couple of weeks ago, the federal judge here in Pennsylvania shot his filing against the NCAA down. He said, the judge termed it as a Hail Mary pass.
Yeah,
a pass of desperation. It's just desperation. It's like nothing that this man has done has been effective. It's just taken the state in the wrong direction. He's been given a pass because, as you said, the main so-called mainstream media, locally as well as nationally, is not bringing him to task. And you talk about the penal system in this country. 82% of the inmates that are currently housed in federal prisons, are high school dropouts.
Yep.
And when many of them are released, they're released without a high school diploma. So they go in with nothing and they come out with less than nothing, which is, as you said earlier, this is the setup. This is the way they keep, their foot on the necks of, not just African Americans, but Latino Americans, Asian Americans, Caucasians, Americans, Italians. People like to think that, there goes those black people upset and outraged and stuff. No, this is not just black kids that's going to pay this price. Everybody, all these kids are going to pay the price. You don't have a decent education. This is what they're doing. And the bottom line is they looked at those stats over the years and said, you know what? There are too many kids going to college. There are too many kids that are graduating from college.
That's right.
We have to put a stop on this. In Germany and other countries where they will look at you as Michael in the fourth grade, boy, this boy Michael, we're looking at these standardized tests, and he is testing off the charts in mathematics. This is where we're going to gear this fourth grade to, and we're going to push him in that direction of being a mathematician, sciences, and engineer. And in the United States, a fourth grader that's two levels behind in reading, the penal system is looking at that and said, Michael,
he got potential.
2 grades behind. He's got potential. This is the kid that we want because we know we can get at the rate that he's he's going in 4th grade and he's on a 2nd grade reading level, we keep that going, then we're going to have him soon. And then they looked at the clock and said, we're not getting them fast enough. So let's handcuff a 7-year-old. Let's because a 7-year-old has a tantrum. Let's go in and handcuff him. To
and that's
to the
a true
wall
story. That's what
because
happened.
he had a tantrum. Let's beat this 14-year-old kid and arrest him and give him a record because the cop said that when he told the 2 friends to stop horseplaying, he looked at him in a threatening manner.
That's right.
Or the young lady in Florida, the 18-year-old who she has a 15-year-old girlfriend. They catch her kissing and they're ready to throw her in jail for 20 years.
Yes. And when you brought up the education as Cowboy Reggie's in the mix here, I got to throw this in because you made some excellent points in this, Anthony. There was a young lady, a 16-year-old black girl, who was a science student. Now, what do we need more than anything else? We need math and science. We always hear about that. This young lady was a marvel, and she was doing an experiment, which, as most budding mad scientists will do, the experiment went awry and it exploded. But it wasn't an explosion like it was going to put people's lives at risk. They wanted to arrest this child. And it was only through the intervention of somebody who was working for NASA and some outrage in cyberspace that spared this young girl. But like you said, if she was anywhere else, her intelligence would have been encouraged. Here, they want to throw her ass in jail, and they didn't care whether she was smart in school or whether she had a college education for her age or whatever. This is concrete. Plantations come to life, and it is about slavery. And I'm only saying this because it was brought up in a thread or two that slavery might be too harsh a word. Well, y'all need to understand this. And I'm going back to all your old heads and not so old heads. In elementary school, you didn't get told about slavery until around the 7th or 8th grade, just as you're going through puberty, when obviously you're going through all kinds of hormonal and emotional changes. But slavery's brought up then. So you got these kids around the same ages now being indoctrinated in a system where your options are extremely limited. Right. You hear the phrase 1 in every 3 African Americans will see jail at some time or another. You're looking around thinking, well, there's my baby. 2 other kids are going to be in jail tonight. Or one day, my kid's going to be in that 1 in 3. It's got to scare any parent who is concerned about the welfare of their child.
Exactly. And we're not, and we're just we don't seem to heed that what's going on right now. And what do you think psychologically that did to that child? What do you think psychologically that did to her? And that's what it is. Destroy the body, imprison the mind. So now you're frightened. She may be, if she doesn't have a good support system in place, she could go by way of the dinosaur because to do something like that, it's a psychological warfare that we are seeing that's being perpetrated on our children.
These are psyops. This is straight out of CIA, NSA stuff. These are psyops designed to create this effect. And Cowboy Reggie's in the mix here. Cowboy, we're talking about the fact that these kids are being indoctrinated into a prison system where as soon as they're born, somebody somewhere is thinking about throwing their behind in a jail cell because we see millions and billions of dollars being spent on prisons and nothing for schools or for continuing education.
Well, first of all, thanks for allowing me to come into Sultry Nation. But when you have up in Philadelphia 20 to 25 schools closing down, but they build a multi-million-dollar jail, and then when you have a Democrat, that same clown, Ron Emanuel, up in Chicago, what does he do? Close schools down. But my question to the panel, Eric Holder, Attorney General, can you name me one significant legislation he has done? Just give me one. Just one. Since he's been Attorney General, what has been his landmark case? Can you tell me?
Well, that's the whole problem. He's been sandbagged, and we've been sandbagged because the Republicans, and this has to be brought up because I think Professor Fred, who will be in later, brought this up in a previous show. The Republicans always play to win. They really don't give a shit about what tactics they use, methodology, whatever. They look to win. And in these cases, their idea of winning is by eliminating the opposition. Whether they do it through rhetoric, whether they do it through actual action, they do it. And the results are right in your face. When we see that a $400 million prison is going to be built in the state of Pennsylvania, in spite of the fact 2 Pennsylvania judges are sitting their asses in jail right now for being busted for being silent partners in building a private correctional facility that threw kids of all kinds of stripes, ethnic groups in that same bump. And as Anthony said, who knows how many more post-traumatic stress disorder situations we'll see from young people who have been arrested for what would be non-offensive crimes that would not warrant incarceration, especially situations where in states that are more radical, like Texas, like Mississippi, where they're being thrown in jail with, in general population, with hardened criminals.
Hardened criminals. And these are non-offensive things. Them kids having water balloon fights on school property, arrest them, put them in jail. You're going to put 2 young men who were throwing water balloons at each other on school property in jail. I mean, can you imagine some of the stuff that we did as kids if they had that same ideology back when we were coming up? I'm 44. I mean, where we could be, we probably just be getting out of prison.
Yes.
They're not even allowing kids to be kids because it's a money issue now. I mean, you talk about the Republican ideology of, win at all costs. Look what they're doing with jobs. You have a jobs bill that's been out there forever and a day, and they won't sign off on it because if you sign off on something like that, you're going to create millions of jobs. People are going to go to work. People will be able to make a decent income to provide for their families. But they're saying we don't want that because then the penal system will it won't make their money. And a lot of these penal system owners, particularly the private ones, they have a lot of these politicians in their pocket. Unfortunately, not just people always like to beat up on the South. I say, whoa. Just like when they were talking about slavery. The South is horrible. Hey, let's call a spade a spade. The North had slavery. They just hurry up and died it out. And they just had a little more group of people here who was basically saying, okay, we got to get rid of this. But ultimately, slavery was they were doing well with slavery here in the North as well. So what you're seeing here, you're seeing a lot of northern governors, a lot of northern mayors who are taking, who quote unquote call themselves Democrats, who have taken on the mantra of a Republican by closing 50 schools in Chicago, by closing 23 schools in Philadelphia, by closing tons of schools around the country. For what? It's about money. You keep telling me, not saying you guys, but these guys keep telling me, oh, well, it's because, the schools are old, and then you fix them. $400 million, you know how many? $400 million could have did a lot of fixing up. You come to me and say, here's $400 million. Now go fix those 23 schools up. Okay. They don't want to fix them up. They want the kids to be incarcerated, so that's why they're doing it. Every time we pick up a newspaper, I mean, Michael, you're excellent at researching. Research over the last 3 months that every day of the week in those last 3 months, some kid somewhere in America have been arrested for something that 20, 30 years ago, that cop would have not only lost their job, they'd probably be going to jail for arresting a kid for something like that.
Exactly.
Over the last 3 months.
And in that spirit, it shows the further desensitizing of the whole concept of throwing somebody in jail, not realizing what they're really throwing them into. Because if I go back to this Mississippi suit that the ACLU filed, and you got to wonder where the hell has the Pennsylvania ACLU been in this, as well as Illinois, regarding their own school situations there. But prisons, as demonstrated in this case, have also become de facto mass institutions for the mentally ill, except without the oversight that pure psychiatric facilities face. So now, as states are tightening their belt because of sequestration and basic austerity nonsense, mental health care is being cut off even further. So the mentally ill, while they may be more likely to be victims of crimes than victimizers, they're in prison at disproportionate rates and are often attacked, and they lack meaningful mental health care in prison and even face conditions that exacerbate the diseases like solitary confinement and total squalor. So we've demonized criminals in the United States to such a point that there's widespread acceptance of the fact that in modern-day jail in America, that means you're going to get raped, you're going to get beaten, there's going to be vermin and filth all over you, and there's going to be abuse because the criminals are punished. Yes, we want to punish criminals, but the brutality of it and the ways that should repel and shame us, there's no shame factor. There's no shame factor because the dollar factor has superseded that now. They want to throw as many asses in jails as possible and fill them up and keep them filled.
Right, but Mike, here's my question, Mike. Okay, when we have a society out there, and I hate to beat up on rappers, but when you have society in our community that glorifies jail, I mean, come on, if we're going to tell it, come on, you tell the whole truth. Again, I'm not sitting up here giving anybody a pass, but I remember on A Different World, back when that was on NBC, you had then my man, Will Smith, white Jada Pinkett was playing a part of the young lady from Baltimore. And I never forgot this part. It was a scene where they said that prison is the black man university. And also, what does that say when the community glorifies the person who comes home from prison, rather than glorify that person who comes home from college, rather than glorify that person who comes home from the military? What does that say?
Well, it leads you to the line that was made famous by Chris Rock when he talked about the Bill Cosby show. A black doctor married to a black lawyer? You know, like as if, you know, are you fucking kidding? You know, this isn't supposed to happen. But, you know, when you say that, Reggie, there's some validity in what you're saying because it went out on the airwaves and they wanted to make sure that message got through. If you're really trying to pervade the nonsense and the notion that the prison is the black man's university, then the schools surely ain't going to be that. So forget about them talking about schools. And for that matter, don't talk about those state lotteries that supposedly sponsored education. I know in my home state of New York they did, and I don't see any, as my man said in the movie Bulworth, ain't no education going on in that motherfucker. The monies from the lottery aren't going. The monies aren't going to fulfill schools. They're not going to refurbish schools. They're not going to buy band instruments. They're not going to even buy uniforms for the sports teams there. So you've taken all these options away from these kids. And, Anthony, I know that would prevail in Philadelphia as well. You know, schools used to pride themselves on the musicians that came out of there, all the extracurricular activities that were available in schools. You know, these were things that actually protected our kids and, in effect, protected us. Because if they were doing these other things, they didn't have time to get in any other kind of trouble. So now, because they want to fill jails as quickly as possible, they want to turn off the tap of hope for as many young people as possible. And it doesn't matter whether it's up north, down south, Midwest, out west, southwest. They are looking to make sure that the jails fill. Corrections Corporation of America, we stated on this show before, made over $750 million profit their first quarter. They've got prisons that they own or operate in 20 states, including the District of Columbia. I know there are two other correctional corporations, but when you look at this, when we were kids, we knew when you thought about a corporation, you thought about IBM or Ma Bell or the auto industry or the post office. Now, the industry is the prisons. You know, who aspires to become part of the prison administrations? You know, you want to be a corrections officer? Are you kidding? That's the only thing you're going to offer to anybody? So you go to school hoping to be a corrections officer? Come on.
You can be a warden and make millions of dollars. But here you go, Mike. This is the sad thing about it. When A Different World was on, you had more people that could relate to good times. Again, I'm not hating on good times, but they could gravitate more to good times living in the project and doing that dance ripoff, and they couldn't even relate to the Jeffersons. They would go ahead and say the good times was far more attainable than, again, the Cosby Show. And let's be honest, when Bill Cosby put together his show and also A Different World, finally HBCUs got some love. But some people didn't think that Drumline, the great movie Drumline, was depictive of HBCUs, but it wasn't. Spike Lee did that.
We've got to remember, we have to remember, especially all of us being in the media, whether it be directly or indirectly, imagery is a powerful thing. Now, let's remember, Cosby didn't just sell this thing to NBC. NBC needed him more than he needed them. Cosby already had made his money. And while I don't always agree with him on things, he has always been on point when it comes to business. You know, the concept of the image of that nuclear family there was very much like what the president has provided now with his family here. And maybe a whole lot of folks watch that sitcom thinking, well, it's got to be a sitcom, because that doesn't happen. You don't have a black doctor marrying a black lawyer and having well-read, intelligent black kids. That was deliberate. They knew that something else in the mix was being put there. NBC, in my humble, would never have put that show on if Cosby hadn't had a track record of being successful as far back in the 60s when he did I Spy, and the popularity and syndication that came from that. So they probably took a shot thinking if they hit, they made a home run, and if not, you know, they can at least say that they tried. So it wasn't like NBC did something out of the goodness of their heart to perpetuate that. And let's be real, have we seen positive imagery, especially on the part of black males, on TV to that degree since?
No. And you got to understand, I'm glad you touched on the Cosby Show, Michael, because, listen, Brandon Tartikoff, who had just been appointed, head of NBC television at the time, I remember at his press conference, he said, if you have a show, submit it to me, and you might get your own show. So, and like you said, and he was put in charge because at that time, NBC was in the toilet.
Yes, sir.
Now,
they were fourth out of third.
Bill Cosby went to ABC. ABC. They was like, no. CBS literally laughed him out the office. You know, at the time they were the kings, and they was like, no one's going to watch that because no one's going to buy it. He went to, like you said, NBC didn't take the Cosby Show because out of the kindness of your heart. Brandon Tartikoff read it, said, let's do it. He said, you don't want to read the whole thing? Nope, let's do it. I done put Puma Man on. I done put all these other shows, the Misfits on, that got Courtney Cox her breakout, which was a horrible show. Sunny Spoon with Van Peebles, Mario Van Peebles. And he what he was doing was, Mike, on the end, he was throwing his stuff on the wall and see what stuck. Cosby stuck. Because, like you said, he had a great track record of the '60s, the '70s, with I Spy, winning an Emmy, doing all these things. But like you said, since then, what positive shows are on TV where African American men, where Latino men are portrayed as leads and as individuals that are children can identify with. You can't. So what they do is they come up with this foolishness, this tomfoolery, these reality garbage.
Exactly.
And this is what our kids aspire to do, and we have to get away from. We have to get them away from that. When you talk,
I got to ask them real quick. Every time when Fox first came out, first thing they do, they ran black shows. When the black audience got them going, all of a sudden they dropped it. Now, Oprah Winfrey, oh my God, look, all of a sudden, her network was in the toilet. What did she do? She went back home to Old Faithful. Old Faithful, what happened? Now Tyler Perry, ratings going off the roof. All I'm saying, gentlemen, that every time, that even, was it ABC, when they got the young lady playing the young lady that's supposed to be in love with
Kelly Washington.
Scandal. I mean, again, whenever these guys get in trouble, they look to the black audience. And for God's sake, don't even get to talk about the young and restless. You had a campaign of people saying, why you bring up the stories? If you knew how much the stories made as far as advertisement, the people got so pissed off, especially black women that was watching it, they changed their whole character to start having positive role models on the stories. And that's a fact. Even the one that come behind the Bold and Beautiful, they having black men playing lawyers. They're playing black corporate executives. You're now seeing that on the stories. We did not see that 15, 20 years ago.
No, that's true. But, there's a sidebar that has to be told here to the audience here regarding Bill Cosby and CBS. When Bill Cosby's success in I Spy had manifested into syndications, he was making some pretty decent dollars. And he wanted to buy the CBS affiliate in Philadelphia. And he had the money. Didn't need no cosigner.
He had
That's right.
Him and
Didn't
Dr.
need no co-signer. And he stepped to him, and they were like, well, Bill, you got money in, but, your skin color is not right.
Put that pudding in your pocket.
We're going to give you some Jello pudding. I don't mean to make fun of this, but this is a point that brings, you have to bear in mind, whenever they talk this bullshit about pulling yourself up by your fucking bootstraps, I tell them all to kiss my black ass. Because you weren't talking about bootstraps regarding the people of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, people who were successful running businesses, conducting businesses, and because whites were so jealous of the fact that they were successful on those streets of Greenwood, Archer, and Pine in Tulsa, Oklahoma, they literally burnt the fucking city to the ground out of nothing else but sheer hate for the fact that these people had done exactly what the American ideal had told them to do. They had built their own piece of the rock, literally. Now, you won't see that in a history book. You won't see a teacher talk. Well, I know some teachers will talk about that, but you won't see that talked about in a history book, especially in a state as reactionary as Texas, controlling the content of what goes into the school book. So the more we delineate this as we spiral out of where we started with our original premise, you see that a lot of these kids are feeling like Kevin Costner's character in No Way Out. They're fucking trapped. And if it's not that they don't have a solid support system of parenting at home, whether it's with two parents or one parent or big mama watching out for them or whatever, they're lost. If they have peer issues that they have to worry about, like gangs, opposing gangs, or being of a different ethnic group in the wrong neighborhood, it tightens the gap even more. I mean, we always talk about how sometimes, how things would be, or you would change anything, if you would change anything. Do we want to be kids? Do we want to be teenagers in this time? Knowing the odds of what's coming at us, knowing the pressures that could be smacking us upside the head because of the forces that are swirling around us that we're not oblivious to, because what we're thinking more about is about how cute Sarita is in school or whatever, how much we like to be with her and all that other kind of stuff, instead of thinking, these people want you in jail. Don't act up. You must conform. You must do exactly as we tell you. Zero tolerance is what they're saying. Zero tolerance. That means we can't even tolerate you. We can't even tolerate your success when you graduate. So Reggie, when I call your name and you get up on that stand, don't you be acting all sassy now. Don't you wave to your folks. You better tell your folks, don't say shit, don't you applaud, don't you do a damn thing. Go up there and get your diploma, because if you're not a good boy, we're going to hold your diploma. So you won't be able to go to Virginia State. We won't tell them shit about you until you comply. Maybe we'll make you do community service, young man, or maybe we'll make your parents pay $500. If they don't have it, well, tough. We're going to hold your diploma until they do. This is the kind of mindset that's existing here. This isn't something we're just making up. This is going on around the country. Things like this has happened, and they've happened to white kids, black kids, girls, boys. This shit is across the board, and there's something evil about this. And you're wondering, where the fuck is the outrage?
There's no outrage. The outrage. You talk about conservatives in this country. Oh, we're very conservative. Well, I asked this question a couple of weeks ago. I said, where are the conservatives at where, it's $55,000 a year to house an inmate? That's an Ivy League education. Yet this country only spends roughly $10,500 per student in our K-12 education system. So you're willing to spend almost $60,000 per inmate, but you only want to spend $10,500 on a student for them to go to school. And again, the attitude is we don't want them educated. We want them in prison. We want them in prison because it is $55,000 a year, but we're going to make a profit off them. Yes, the taxpayer, you and I are going to pay for that, but they're not going to pay for it. Those corporate guys, they're not going to pay for it. They're making the profit from it. So where is the outrage? Why aren't people taking to the street saying, calling up their senators and their aldermen and their mayors and saying, what the hell is going on? What are you guys doing? You are destroying. You're taking us. You're taking us back to the dark ages so fast that Charles Darwin would be astounded.
You ain't lying, brother. We're talking Dickens, best of times, worst of times. it's some really rough times. We get more wisdom from the chat room where they're talking about, as we made a side about the education issue, they're saying, yeah, don't stand proud and get your props for beating the odds and getting an education. And I think, Anthony, that hits right to your point. Education is no longer something that's being promoted as a necessary way to go. It's almost as if you had to dodge a minefield. And I'm thinking about all these kids cross-country, they dodge their own minefields every day, whether it's peer pressure, whether it's gangs, whether it's just a bad home situation, all kinds of shit. And through their own personal fortitude, oftentimes, or even with the assist of strong adult figures, whether they be parents, relatives, or what have you, they beat the odds and get their education. And on that time when you would think they'd have a chance to, we did it. Now on to the next achievement. They get smacked upside the head.
Quick, Mike, I got to add this to Mike real quick. Okay, when President Obama and the First Lady first hit the Oval Office, you heard right-wing conservatives saying they're uppity, they're arrogant. Now, help me understand this. Years ago, when a black person came out of Ivy School, it was such a great accomplishment. It was like, oh, look how hard they worked. But all of a sudden, when President Obama comes, oh, they're arrogant, they're uppity. When Gates got his black ass yanked out of his house by the cop, and President Obama had his Negro moment and said the cop acted stupidly, all of a sudden, wait a minute, just go ahead and look at the polls. I got to defend the voters. I mean, come on, we're going to
tell the truth. That's true. That's true.
I mean, help a brother out. If I'm wrong, help me out.
No, when he saw Henry Gates' black ass getting shipped out of that house, he knew that could have been his black ass too. So we know the reality of the deal. The problem here is that Pandora not only left the box, her ass was evicted, and she can't get the fuck back in, because we know whatever hope that was there in seeing the faces that we see now at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, it has been dampened. It has been dampened by the politics of the Dick Dastardlys, not just on the Republicans, but on the Democrats as well. These same people who have conspired, some who have profited off of the president's presence and kept their jobs, but ultimately those who are willing to allow this country to fail because they are not thinking about sharing any of the wealth or future of this country. They would rather destroy it and turn it into a gulag. And it's scary because it's straight out of stuff I've read in science fiction, that they don't care what color you are. And I have to stress this, color ain't got shit to do with this. Are black people and brown people probably more adversely affected by this? Yeah, possibly. But you better believe that white family that thought they had everything going right 5 years ago, who's now in the dumps because now their home's being foreclosed, jobs are gone. Don't sit there and get mad at that brother or that Latino brother next to you and shit. You don't realize that you've been played. The few that might know, they might know only because their son or daughter might have came home in a coffin. Because when they went to go fight for Bush's oil, they didn't realize it until they saw that coffin and realized, fuck, I got played, and my kid is being sacrificed for it. Let's be real here. Anybody who is poor or a minority has beaten the odds in this country if they make it through college and get a degree. White men fear that, and that's real. That's not my words. That's wisdom coming from the chat room. And there is a reality to that because we see that same kind of animosity in the White House. For all I know, and I'm really going out on a limb on this one, for all I know, all of these motherfuckers could sit around in the same little four-cornered room and sip brandy and cigars and not give a rat's ass about anybody because they got theirs. But when somebody speaks up and says, look, all you got to do is sign this paper, we can put together an infrastructure action plan that would kick the WPA projects of the 1930s in the ass. We could put everybody to work, building roads, fixing bridges. We don't have to have bridges fall down on us anymore like they did in Seattle, or rather in Washington State or anywhere else. We can do this. We have the technology, we have the skill, we can fix this. What are you going to say? Are you willing to allow this country to become so medieval that when you travel across it, it'll be divided in sections, and those sections, and this is where the states' rights thing becomes really sinister, can legislate their own situations. We've seen movies where people get arrested and when they think they're going to do just a night in jail for something like that, the next thing you know, they're on a chain gang and they can't get the fuck out. This is the kind of possibility that you can expect now. There's no uniformity traveling from point A to point B in this country because of the chaos that's ensuing. Because who knows how badly Virginia wants to throw more asses in jail. Who knows how badly Pennsylvania wants to throw more youths in jail. Did somebody do a feasibility study as they were building this $400 million prison and saying, you know, with the possibility of employment 9%, and you can multiply that 9 by 2 if you're black, and you can multiply that by 2 more if you're over 40. So when we see those possibilities for unemployment, we can hypothesize that if it's a 1,500 prison unit, we can fill that bad boy up in less than 9 months because of the potential retention rate we can get for people that will pick up for minor crimes and just throw them in there. I mean, these numbers have been put out there. There's been data done before you, me, Anthony, and everybody else on our staff can sit back and think about. And nobody is saying anything. Where's 60 Minutes? I'll even settle for 59 fucking minutes, but somebody say something about this shit.
Exactly. No one seems to get, because I think some people still live in. I think the near extinct middle class is still holding on, believing that this does not affect them. But this is the problem with America. We are too caught up in ourselves. Like what I was saying earlier tonight about regarding, you know, education in our communities, and it's no longer a black thing. It's no longer it's just those black kids, or no, it's just those black and brown kids. It's all our kids. But we have this attitude, Michael, in this country where, well, you know what? It's not my kid. My kid, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do for my kid. So as long as my kid is achieving, then that's all that matters. And it's not supposed to be that way. And if you really want to get, if I want to get horrible about it, I can say, well, just imagine your kid is doing everything right, but because your neighbor's kid was out there doing wrong because nobody was teaching them, then your kid may end up on that slab at the hands of your neighbor's kid because you felt you didn't need to instill some wisdom in that kid to say, you know what, you know, listen, you need to be in school. I'm gonna, you know, even though your parent might not show that you care, I want you to know that there are people out here that care about you. I care, you know. And then this is when everybody is upset. So I still think there's a huge segment in this country, particularly the like I said, the fading, near extinct middle class who still think, well, it's not my kids. And I'm saying, read the paper. Poverty in suburbs is at its highest. It's higher than it is in the inner cities. So wake up. This is your problem. So you should be at the forefront saying, look, y'all guys need to step up. I mean, if for nothing else, Michael, for nothing else, they should be like, look, we don't want them black and brown, them poor white people in our community. So tell me what I need to do. Tell me, do you got to raise our taxes? Do we need to put more money in those communities? Tell me what I need to do because I don't want them in our communities. Even if you want to do something like that. But you better wake up and understand that this is no longer a certain ethnic group's problem. This is America's problem. Our youth are you know, they are the prey. Okay? The penal system is the hunters, and our kids are the prey. They said, listen, if you don't have a lot of money, you can't afford to get your kid out of jail, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We're gonna incarcerate them, and we're gonna do what we want to do with them. And it's as simple as that. So it's frustrating to me all the time that I look around and say, where is the outrage? Where is the outrage? You know, no one seems, only a handful of people, it seems, in this country are actually standing up saying, man, y'all guys, you're killing us. You're turning this country, there's third world countries' education system that's better than ours now.
That's right.
But you got so many people in this country thinking that, oh, well, that's not true. That it is true. I'm not making this stuff up.
Right. But, Mike, here's my point. Okay, in this society, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have cell phones. And this has been some of the most laziest side pieces of clowns out there. And I'm talking about the black community when it comes to getting information out. I mean, just look back in the 40s, 30s, and the 50s. You did not have nowhere near the apparatus of what you have now when it comes to communication, getting people together. But guess what? If it's Housewives of Atlanta, oh, yeah, everybody's out there talking. If it comes to some BS, you know, that people want to see, like, you know, Lil Wayne making a stupid-ass song about Emmett Till and putting that with sex, people blow off the trailer. Or either Kanye West was getting some trim from some Canadian bra, and then they want to try to get his little game on what he's doing over there with this chick that's pregnant. I'm just saying again, I'm sorry, guys, but what I'm about to say might piss me off, but it got to be said, man.
Say what you need to say. That's what the show is.
Just like Malcolm said, when it came to being in that dentist chair and pulling that tooth, he gave you a little Novocaine. Even though he was pulling that and giving you pain, he made you a little woozy. When it comes to the political system right now, hey, President Obama, give you credit, but the bottom line, President Obama right now is a symbol. I'm sorry, he's a symbol.
That's right.
Black folks look at him as being a symbol.
No.
And if you think that you're going to get something out of him now, you can hang it up.
Don't be sorry for that, because we already hypothesized. If we look ahead to 2014 and they're saying we need to get all these rascals out, the ones who are already, you know, pimping off the system and whatnot, well, most of you dumb motherfuckers, you shouldn't have realized you shouldn't have voted them back in the first fucking place. But having said that, now that they're in and they might get out, 2014, you know what their strategy is going to be? Well, you know, we got it this far. Now all we have to do is keep stalling. And we, you know, Obama's a lame duck. We can quack his ass all the way to 2016, and we didn't have to do jack shit. And in doing so,
people did too.
This is one of those issues where, when, and I'm sidebarring here, when the president's wife stepped to that lady who was crying about LGBT rights, and she said, "You have an issue, you know, you take that shit up with my husband. Other than that, don't interrupt my speech." And she literally walked to her. She didn't worry about whether security was going to do nothing. She walked to the lady, and the lady bitched up. She had it was like, "Oh shit," you know, but she didn't think it was going to be like that. And that's what we need. I could give a fuck what color the president is. I'll keep this 100% real. My vote would have gone for Dennis Kucinich, because Kucinich is more in line with my belief about universal health care, all this other stuff, without having to make shit up. So we know the president's mindset is more like Reagan than it is than even LBJ. But when we come down to it, if a black face has a whip in their hand and is whipping your ass, as opposed to a white face having a whip and whipping your ass, or what are you more fearful of, the color of the face or the sting of the whip? So we have to understand that if the president is really going to try to salvage what's left of this administration, he needs to go Dolomite and flex on people. He needs to say, "I'm using my executive privilege." There will be a veterans job plan out there. So veterans, people who serve our country, will get their final due, and they'll be treated like the human heroes that they are supposed to be treated, and we'll get the jobs going, and so the infrastructure will be built, so we don't have to worry about whether or not Amtrak's tracks are going to last another 24 hours without a train derailing on us. You know, fuck the oil lobbies. We're going to get high-speed trains built across this country so to make it easier for people to get from point A to point E. You know, rather to point B. All of these things are possible. All he has to do is flex and do that. And it's not being done. And how do I know that? Because Bush did it. When he got reelected, he said, "Kiss my ass. I'm throwing down. You can't do nothing about it. This is my sweat equity that I've earned and got away with all of the stuff that I got away with, so now I'm really going to throw the hammer down." We need the president to throw the hammer down and stop this bullshit.
Well, we have, and I guess, you know, it's funny that you say that, because he was the last one to do it. Bush was the last one to say, you know, listen, you know, screw what y'all say, I'm gonna do this.
That's
you know, one of the best ones, two of the best that was good at doing it was one, Abraham Lincoln, and the other one was Theodore Roosevelt. They were both good at saying, you know what, screw that. I need to get this done. You're not going to do it. Hey, what did in the movie? What did Lincoln say? I am the president, and I'm cloaked or clothed in the next hour. He was letting them guys know from the gate that this is what it's going to be, and that's what I was always hoping what President Obama would do this election. I was
That's
so
exactly
hopeful
right.
that he was going to come in his second term and say, you know what?
Anthony, I think a lot of people were waiting for that. They thought, all right, give him a couple months, whatever, and then they thought, all right, now it's time to whip some ass, and that ass wasn't
He
whooped.
didn't do it. Nope.
Yeah, I figured he was going to say, listen, you know what? The people voted for me overwhelmingly. And they're saying they're giving me the green light to go ahead, and it's a mandate. Right. They're giving me the green light to do what I need to do to get this country back on point. You want to get upset and cry foul? Yep. Take me to court. Until that day, I'm implementing jobs. I'm implementing veterans. I'm implementing all the things that we need to make this country better. Yep. And he hasn't done that. And you got this. You got a minority group holding the country, the majority of the country, hostage. A minority group of right-wing racist bigots who have no love for this country because they feel like, immigrants are here, black people are here, so many other ethnic groups here that they hate America, and they're doing anything they can to keep America. Yeah, they want their country back, but not the country that they want back. They want to put black people on boats and send them to anywhere but here. They want to get all the Latinos out of here. They want to get the Native Americans out of here. I'm saying, that's just funny to hear. Native Americans, meaning they're the native. They even want them out of here. They even want them out of the country, and they're holding the country hostage to ensure that no decent, no worthy piece of legislation goes through to better not just our lives, but our future kids, which is our children.
Yeah. Right. But this is my problem. But him doing that. Okay, you remember when Ronald Reagan allegedly had somebody come to his bedroom, tap him on his shoulder, and say, "We can get you anytime we want to." Call me, conspiracy theorist, Steven Spielberg. But how much this play on his black ass saying, you know what? If I want to stay alive, I got to play politics. I never forgot when Bill Clinton got his first election, when he won. He went to the office with all these Democrats. I never forgot this. When he came out, he had a look on his face like, damn, I know what I want to do, but they told me how things are going to be. Again, gentlemen, just throwing this out there.
You have to. I think, Reggie, we have to remember these things here, because whatever people want to admit it or not, race is infected in everything that's done in the United States of America. I mean, it's like the air we breathe. We can't get around it or can't get over it or anything like that. We already know that we can't get over it. As far as the first administration, when Eric Holder said we're cowards when it comes to race, the cowardice itself has manifested in these actions, in stopping the Affordable Care Act, or at least attempting to, 38 fucking times. Now, that didn't have to do with race, because there were white patients who were going to be benefiting from the Affordable Care Act, but it didn't matter. We got to stop that nigga. And some of these same people voted these fools back in, knowing what they were doing. We saw in South Carolina that their new governor is somebody who was an adulterer, who was embezzling funds that were state funds that the taxpayers paid him, and they reelected his ass back in there. So what does that say about the people in South Carolina? And I'm sorry, I know no hating on Geechees and whatnot, but look what y'all just did. Y'all elected this fool.
Thank you.
When the guy in Texas, before that plant blew up, started talking about privatization as being the way to go, well, when that building blew up, all of a sudden he wanted aid. But did he get money out there to people from Sandy? Did he take care of the people who were involved in the storms in Oklahoma and elsewhere? No. But when that thing blew up, I want we need some help here. See,
Same thing in Virginia. When the earthquake hit Virginia, Eric Cantor, that devil, that snake that you see making the rounds on TV, can't stand the bastard. And we had a chance to overthrow his ass. You know what people did when the public convention came in? Eric Cantor is in a district just like Bobby Scott, and that's geared for Republicans, so let's not go after him. The guy, Powell, who ran against him, had his own money, and he was right there. He lost on maybe 8 or 9%. He said any kind of money from the Democratic Party, we could have took Eric Cantor out. But it was these bitch-ass Democrats in Virginia that stood there and allowed that clown to come back, and he's one of the biggest traitors. I call him this a traitor that's running on TV right now that's been a problem for the United States. Eric Cantor, that devil himself.
Let's understand this. Let's understand this on the real. There's another effect that's underneath all of this. And as we talked about how kids are being affected by this, don't think their parents aren't being affected by it as well. You know, there's millions of parents out there hurting, and many of them supplement through food stamps or SNAP and all of that, and just the whole process. And this goes as far back as, and I've, knock wood, never taken welfare or a dime of it, but the bottom line is when you go in those offices, Social Security and welfare, the atmosphere is spirit depriving. They want to dehumanize you. So, you know, you don't go and apply, and I'm reading some wisdom from the chat room now. Don't go and apply for SNAP benefits, or you will find out how quickly they don't care about all your previous accomplishments or now even failure. You're a nobody. You are exactly where they want you. They want you begging, and that goes for anybody. So when you see all of that stuff, you know, it's indicative of what's happened since the beginning of this country. You know, the current president, out-clevered his opponents twice. He was playing chess when they were checkers. And that's the kind of wisdom and vision, had he been white, they would have lauded him for it. They might have been chiseling out another piece of Mount Rushmore for his melanin-challenged ass right now. But we know that's not happening, because when they saw that, to many, it just revised and renewed their own prejudices and showed them things that maybe they were told when they were kids on their knee about black people or any person of color. And now all their fears have come to pass. We've made several asides on this show about how the president's fate was similar to Sheriff Bart in Blazing Saddles. But see, in the Blazing Saddles instance, you know, even they had to grudgingly admit that he was the man, they eventually got along with it and they dealt with it. But there's not going to be a moment where the president does something like sign the Affordable Care Act and some little kindly old lady's going to drop an apple pie on his doorstep and say, sorry for the up yours nigger. Because the up yours nigger is happening right now in this country in how they are stopping all Americans from moving forward due to the resistance of a hand-picked few, and not just them, but the lobbying interests that go with them. Let's not ignore what Citizens United has done in the mix of all of this in making sure that corporations get a bigger stranglehold on not just American interests, of what they can do with America, because let's face it, Japan owns a big chunk of us. China owns another piece. We're China's bitch too. By the time the day is over, there ain't much that Americans could call as being really American. And that's exactly the way the corporations wanted it, which was why Citizens United was such an evil piece of legislation to begin with.
Shit, China just bought Steubenville Ohio out here in Virginia for $7.4 billion. So you better be watching your barbecue and pork when you eat it now, ladies and gentlemen out there. I'm not being funny either.
I also think one of the reasons why there's such an attack on education and incarceration is the cat's meow, is that you have a lot of elected officials that aren't very intelligent. You have a lot of elected officials who, other than they didn't get their, you can see their works that they basically, their education was bought for them.
That's right.
And you can see their absolute hatred. Like Rick Santorum, he called President Obama, he's a snob. The nerve of him telling
he called him something else too that they never want to admit to.
To go to school and get an education. He's a snob. People without an education, they do very well. Okay, but he is telling that, isn't that something? Even those of us who, let's say my parents, they didn't have college degrees, but they stressed to my mother. Her parents stressed to her to go to school, get a good education. It's important. He's calling this president a snob. And again, we know that's a lot of coded word. That's coded for here's this black man, this Negro, who he's educated, he's uppity, he's arrogant. And that's normally, unfortunately, that, racism and America go hand in hand. We'll never truly be able to get rid of racism in this country because it's so interwoven into the American fabric. But this is unfortunate. He's walking around saying these things. Or Newt Gingrich talking about, oh, no, these kids don't need to be in school. What they need is they need a job. give them a mop and a bucket and let them run the schools? How they going to run the schools if they're not educated? I mean, again, all this stuff was out there, and most people and even the media kind of just like, okay, well, yeah, he said what he said, but, that's really not important. Instead of saying we need to hold these individuals accountable. And we're not doing that.
As we started at the beginning of the show, as I want to rewind this back to the beginning, we talked about the media or the lack of the media saying something about this. Now, locally, when that Action News or whatever the program gets turned on at 11 o'clock tonight, and as Anthony stated, are we going to see the Klieg lights under Mayor Nutter asking him what the hell are you going to do about this school/prison situation? How are you going to fix this? Who does Mayor Nutter answer to? The corporate interest of Corrections Corporation of America or whatever private prison company there is? Or does he have to answer to the people who actually voted him in? You have to ask these questions. And in Pennsylvania, if Mayor Nutter is not being proactive in trying to solve this problem, you have to ask yourself the question, well, does he have a piece of the action his damn self? Because if two judges bought pieces of a correctional facility, who's to say Mayor Nutter didn't? Who's to say he doesn't have dummy? And I'm not trying to accuse him of anything. But if you don't like the effect, you shouldn't produce the cause. And if you're looking at the effect of 23 school closings juxtaposed to a $400 million prison being built, well, the only jobs that are going to be there are going to be for the workers who are building the damn prison. Once that prison's built, who do you think is going to fill it? Do you think it's going to be kids from off the main line or Ballackinwood? No. It's going to be them kids from Northwest to South Philly who are going to fill it.
Exactly. Those are the ones who are going to pay the price. Those are the ones that are going to continue paying the price until we take on this education system. Until we take on this penal system and the education system and fix them. We also, Michael, have to deal with our communities. These churches, it's ridiculous.
That's a good statement. And where is the church in this, Anthony? Where has the church been in seeing these schools, these educational institutions crumble in front of them? I know they can't be just sermonizing on Sunday afternoons thinking everything is all tickety-boo here. Right.
We're not holding them accountable. Our communities are falling apart, and they're nowhere to be found. These mega churches going up all over, and they're coming in these communities, these impoverished, poor communities, and they're not bringing anything to uplift the community. They're not involved. They're not involved with the schools. You don't see church, a lot of the churches out there, and I'm not saying every church. I'm saying there's a lot of churches that's not being active in helping fix what we got, the problems that we got going on in this country. And, we have to fix it, and we're not doing it. The churches are silent. A lot of the community, so-called community organizations in the community, they're not doing anything. So you got to ask yourself, and these kids see this. They see that these people aren't showing any love for them, man. They're not showing them support. So the kids are saying, if the adults don't give a damn,
thank you.
If they're not going to invest in us, then why the hell should I? Why get up and go to school?
That's right.
Or why go to a school where you're telling me one day, all is well, and then, like in Michigan, 6 weeks ago, where the kids are going home for the day, and administrators tell them, oh yeah, today was your last day. Get the hell out.
Right.
Don't come back. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean don't come back? Yeah, the school, it's been closed. They closed it. Yep. So we're not getting transferred to another school? No. Y'all summer vacation begins. Good luck. Here's some wooden knives because we don't have any programs out there for you guys. Community centers where you can get off the streets. Take these wooden knives and hopefully they can help you. In a pinch. This is what I'm talking about.
You can't make this stuff up. It's scary.
You can't make it up.
And the kids see the parents. And it's not that the parents are trying to fool them, but if they see that the parents are dispirited, there's no hope for them. And especially as they get older and they realize what kind of system it is, that leads to the criminal mindset. They realize, well, I've got no options, and I'm going to go out the way I see fit. And then they get caught up in the bullshit, which ultimately leads a lot of them in jail. Because if we're going to be totally honest here, there were far more brothers in school and graduating than the numbers wish to report. Because if we put those numbers out there, then that flies in the face of the truth and, kicks the stereotype in the behind. But we know they don't roll. They don't want to roll like that. They want a certain depiction, and they want that image to always remain in the minds of everybody, that the face of the poor, the face of the suspect is a black male. They want that to remain so, and they want to keep it that way. They don't want to see that the real suspects are some of those sons of bitches in Congress right now. When you have female politicians telling women to their face, oh, we have enough laws already. We don't need an equal pay amendment. Now, these are women politicians saying this thing.
Exactly.
You got to wonder. When you have male politicians telling women that, well, we need to look at that coochie because invasive ultrasound is going to be mandatory in this state and you can't have an abortion, who's a man to tell a woman what to do with her body? But we have it, and you had officials there that you elected to say exactly those same things. Where are these people and where are their mindsets? And if we're going to really be 100 here, if nobody else was going to come to the aid here, where is our own black media to say something about this? I don't want to see any more damn videos on Centric, and even though I like Unsung, the real unsung happens to be the people out here who are slinging and trying to keep hope alive for our kids. I don't need to hear all of that. I need Centric to get off their asses and do something about this. I need them to put out documentaries. I need them to do news on this. I can take 5 or 10 booty-shaking videos less if you give me real news about what the hell is going on out here. I'm sure your sponsors won't be kicking you in the ass for it. It'll be money well spent if you invest in that. Don't sit there and talk this BS about education if you're not going to put something in the pot. Where are the black papers to do this? I don't hear anything squeaking from 16th Street where I used to work at the Philadelphia Tribune, and I'm calling them out because I used to work for these chumps. And they don't do anything or say anything that amounts to a hill of beans. The one person they did have saying something for them, they put her ass out on the precipice and asked her to jump when the supposed PABJ was supposed to protect her. And now Bobbi Booker, only through her own wit and self-preservation, survived and thrived in that because she wouldn't allow herself to be a pariah after that nonsense in Philly Mag about being white in Philly. While these jokers who call themselves a news organization in the PABJ hasn't done shit. They haven't spoken up about the schools. They haven't spoken to anybody about all this. And if they have said anything, it hasn't gained enough of an effect to make the mayor pause or the governor pause or anybody else who's involved in building this $400 million prison to pause. No,
it hasn't. It hasn't. Here in Philadelphia, it's been silent. You have a couple of Karen Heller who did an outstanding job on that piece about being white in Philly, where she took them to school. But you didn't see a lot of, and the writer you talked about. But you didn't see, overall, you didn't see it. It's just they just sit back and there's no more true journalists out there anymore. They're not reporting these stories. And if they reported them, it would get traction. But they just, again, it's about keeping you entertained. So they put the booty shaking, the reality, girl, you better get out of my face and this and that, because they know people are focused in on that. People, they want an escape. We all at times want an escape from reality. But what's happening is that it's become a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days, 366 in leap years. Leap year. This is all we want for the most part. Our society. They want to be entertained every single day. No one wants to start taking a stand, draw a line in the sand, and say, "This is where I'm taking my stand at." They don't want to pick up, a sword of decency and integrity and say, I'm going to take this battle on because it is worth it. It's worth it. You know, the kids on Friday, they're supposed to do a march in the downtown here in Philadelphia, and I'm glad to see that. But once again, where are these Democratic, so-called Democratic elected officials here in the city? They talk a little, they rap a little, but they don't do anything. They don't do anything. And I'm saying, but you know, again, it's also the people that go out and vote. When you stay home and you don't vote because you don't care, this is how they want it. They want you to not care because they know that they're gonna take care of their friends, and their friends are gonna go out and vote, and they'll win that seat again instead of getting actively involved. We don't see that anymore. We don't see that anymore in the black communities. We don't see that anymore in the Latino communities, where people used to be engaged and they held their elected officials, they held their ministers, they held their imams, they held their rabbis, they held them accountable. They're not doing that anymore. They're giving them a free. They're giving them a pass.
Anthony, you said something really scary to me, and I just realized it as we were touching back on this whole issue of prisons as opposed to schools. I can remember as far back as being in kindergarten, and my old school, PS 169, back in New York City, was being torn down, and a new school, PS 128, was being built next to it. So we were transitioning from the old school to the new school, and you know, every day now I was looking at walking from my house the 4.5, 5 blocks to this new school. And the more I thought about it, I realized that is the last time in my whole scholastic career, junior high school, college, that is the last time I was involved in a brand new school. Now, y'all know I got some time on my ass, so think about that. I mean, we're talking at least 2 generations plus, and not a new school. Right. So think about when you were a kid and everybody else. Y'all think about that. Ask yourselves, when's the last time you went to a new school as you were going to school, or you got transferred to a new school or refurbished school, something. Schools have been on the wane for a long time. This smack upside the head that we're getting right now, it may be a serious blow to a lot of folks, but this has been coming for a long time. If I had to go back to even before 2nd grade, make that 3rd grade, even before 3rd grade, before I would walk into a new school building, think about the millions of other kids. Think about yourself, kids you know, relatives you know, right, in a similar situation. Think about all the Catholic schools who, for better or for worse, always provided the fundamentals. When you left for Catholic school, you knew how to read, write, and function to some degree.
Exactly.
But now Catholic schools have been torn down and consolidated, and it's not so much that we hear fuss about that because the church is running interference for all the shit that the priest did in sodomizing kids and stuff that, that gets swept under the rug too. So again, it's a cross-cultural thing, it's a cross-faith thing, it surely is cross-ethnic groups, but it's been systematically designed to chop away at a foundation that many people don't think has been unearthed until it directly affects them.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct.
As Reggie's being brought back in here, as I'm getting more wisdom from the chat room, they're saying these kids today change schools looking for better ones constantly, and they're not finding any. How do they ever keep up or catch up? The best way to answer that would be in going through something I saw growing up. Now, in New York City, you had lots of places where you could go for field trips and stuff like that. You had great museums, all other kind of stuff. But my favorite trip when I was a kid was to the United Nations. We actually went through the UN. They gave us the little 25-cent tour. We sat in the General Assembly. You could pick up a headphone, and you press 1, you'd hear Chinese. Press 2, you hear French. 3, you hear Tagalog. 4, German. That kind of stuff. So I left there like an Alka-Seltzer tablet and a glass of water. I'm like, I want to be a UN translator. Do you think that there would be classes that would teach language that early? No. By the time they teach language in the U.S., at least in New York's public school system, you're already in your early or preteens, and whatever age you had to learn may well have been dissipated, because studies have shown the prime time to infuse a kid with as much input as possible, other than while you're in the womb, is between the ages of 4 and 9. Then they can handle major immersions of input regarding knowledge. And these things aren't done in the school system, because if you taught a kid another language, that kid would have the confidence then to do something else. Because when that confidence comes, it changes you and makes you a different person. Something as simple as language would have made the difference. But I can tell you, from living in Germany and being abroad, I could always tell who the Americans were, because they were the clueless ones. They were the ones with their heads in the air, or the ones who, like you said, had the ugly American arrogant attitude. If language had been taught here early, who knows how many more generations of American kids would have been affected, because they would have realized it's a shared culture worldwide, instead of thinking our culture was better than anybody else's, and we isolated ourselves in that.
That's what we've done. We've become great isolationists while the rest of the world is advancing light years ahead. You talked about our infrastructure. We have the worst infrastructure in the world. I mean, you know, what we spend on our infrastructure and building roads, you know, China spends double that. Mm-hmm. And so we have, you know, I talk about from time to time when I write an article or op-ed, I talk about us moving to the dark ages. I mean, we're there. I mean, we are officially in the dark ages, because we have so many people, many of them sitting at the head of our government, that they don't want to advance. They want a simpler time. They want a simpler time. When everything was, you know, mint juleps and things of that matter. They don't want to advance. They don't want to move forward. No. They want to keep things. They don't even want to stay where they are now. They're saying, look, we need to go back. We need to go back to the days of old when, you know, you could eat. You know, if you don't want to have certain people at your restaurant, you should have that right. You know, school, it should no longer be free. I mean, if you can afford it, great. If you can't, you know, so sorry, so out of luck. You know, right. So this is where we are. And then, like you said, you talk about languages and stuff. I didn't take, you know, and when I worked on my PhD, finishing up my PhD, but when I was finishing my master's, I had a choice. I'll never forget it. Dr. Rudnitsky said, okay, well, you know, you've been accepted into the master's program in Central and Eastern European Studies, but you have to take a foreign language. Have you ever taken a foreign language? I said, I took several years of Spanish. I said foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He said, I said foreign language. So he said, you get a choice. You can either take German or you can take Russian. I said, well, you know, I would like to learn Russian. He was like, well, if you want to learn Russian, we're not teaching it here for this semester. So you can go to the University of Penn, and you have to pay about $800, or you can take German here. And that's, you know, I said, well, I'll take German. And it took me a good long time to learn German. And I remember sitting here thinking, like, damn, we didn't have this when I was in school. Like, you know, all we had was Spanish and French. I'm like, man. And German, I'm like, I actually like German. I'm like, I actually like this language. It's a good language. It's a strong language. It's a language with history behind it. So America, that's what we've done, and what we've also doing now. We're doing it to our children. We're isolating our children, and we're creating this system. Well, it's not even created, because, as Michael, as you've been saying for the longest, it just came about. This system of case system has been in place, and we're just looking now. Our society is saying, look, if you're poor, you really don't have time for school.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So you may as well work, and we don't care if you work for a minimum wage at a McDonald's or you work 20 cents an hour in the prisons. We just want your ass working, because
we just want you working.
That's the way of things. You're going to know your place, and you're never going to rise above your station. And as Cowboy Reggie comes back into this, you know, Cowboy, we've covered a lot of ground in this, and we didn't even get a chance to do this. And funny, the chat room saying work where, because that is another question. Work and where, because there better be a job for you to work. If there's no job, there ain't no question about whether you work or not. But Cowboy, give me your assessment of what you've heard all this time. Because as we were saying about the language thing, it didn't have to be language. If it was band, if you learned an instrument, there's a certain attitude that comes with mastery of something. So that would stimulate your learning to want to pick up on more things, whether it would be more music or whether it would be something else. So now band is gone. Whether it was science, if they had even half the science stuff that they had when I was a kid, a lot of kids would be interested. Those things are gone. So in addition to not just summer programs, but other after-school programs that encouraged kids stimulating their minds are all gone. We now have a vast wasteland, and we want these kids to travail this vast wasteland like if they were the native sisters in rabbit-proof fence. We just want them to walk across the burning sands and whatnot, and if they make it, well, hooray for them. But if not, too bad. They were supposed to die anyway.
The sad thing about it, Mike, I have seen high school teachers here in Richmond, Virginia, early in the morning, get a cup of coffee, hair just all over themselves. Look at their face of despair. And these are the teachers going into some of these high schools. And I say that again because when we don't have the parents who are now our babies, where the mother won't come up there and whoop the teachers at, and principal asked because little boo-boo has come home, and then the Sherial said, you're giving us homework. Why are you giving us homework? I mean, to hear that kind of foolishness going on. And when, again, I hate to bring up the rapists again, but we have a group in our society right now that glorifies jail. I got to go back to that again. And if it's not these crazy TV sitcoms we see, they don't care about education. All they care about is if I get 15 years old, I might not make it to a casket. If I get 21, oh, my God, that's my life expectancy. We as society do not have a world view. We do not have a world view. You do not know what's outside of your own land. How many people even live in the cities don't even go out to the county, let alone go to the neighboring states? You probably got tons of people right there in Philadelphia who never even been to Virginia, never saw the Martin Luther King Monument, never even been down to Florida and Disney, for Christ's sake. And if you have that small cocoon that stays in that little web, should we say, display, then they know anything else about the reach for the stars. And again, I look at the sports, the same thing with sports and music. As long as you have this small little niche out there that we can carve you and crave you, you won't get the Republicans, the Chuck D's, and the Kyrus Ones. Get out there and use the rap as a metaphor to get out there and be revolution. No.
Reggie, hang on a minute. Reggie, hold on a minute because I just want to give an advisory before the hour. I want everybody who's listening in the chat room and elsewhere to know if we go past the 11th hour mark here, anything that's said afterwards will be saved and you'll hear the show in its entirety. So everybody who's interested in staying on, can listen to the chat room because we got one other topic that we want to cover regarding Jay-Z and his conquering the world one athlete at a time. I want to go to our final thoughts, though, and because Brother Johnson has been so gracious to give us so much time here, Anthony, I have much respect for your work, brother, and I know we're all out here doing what we can do as best as we can do it. Anthony has a book out, We Can Be the Outcome, and he is also live this time that you hear from 9 to 11 on Blog Talk Radio. Anthony, as our show format is, you have the floor to make a statement about anything you want and then put in a shameless plug for whatever it is that you're doing right now, please.
Okay. As I always say, the education system, we are truly now have come to we've come to the apex, and that if we don't fix it, if we don't fight it, if we don't, fight the future, because right now the future is pretty bad when it comes to the education system taking on the prison system. The prison system, it's like the Empire Strikes Back. They got the upper hand. The bad guys are winning. The good guys we on the ropes. But I believe we can rise and we can take care of the things that we need to take care of if we are willing to stop being selfish and stay focused on the task at hand. Don't get sidetracked. Don't get caught up in this foolishness. The plug is, as I tell people on my show, listen to Michael. He understands what's going on. He has the knowledge. He has the advice. He has a plan. You know, for those who listen to this show, and I'm sure there's a lot of you folk out there listening. Listen, continue. But now take what he's saying and try to apply it to your little Mayberry, because that's what's important now. Start planting those seeds. Start planting those seeds that he's giving you, you know, twice a week, and put it in your Mayberry. And I believe it's going to bear good fruit. So start planting it. That's all I have to say tonight, Michael. Thank you for allowing me to
appreciate that. Give us a plug for your show, please.
Hey, listen to the Anthony Johnson Show Thursdays, Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Blog Talk Radio. It's it's a good show. I hope you take an opportunity to listen in and call in and just see what we're doing. We're trying to make America great. It can be great again. I truly believe that for every one of us. Thanks again, Michael.
Most definitely, Brother Anthony Johnson. Again, you can hear him every Thursday night from 9 to 10 on the Anthony Johnson Show on Blog Talk Radio. Cowboy, time for you to throw something in the pot, brother, and a shameless plug, if you would. Cowboy, you there? Cowboy? Well, you're having gremlins with the microphone. Well, I'll come back to you in a hot second, but I do want to make this point about something that we didn't get a chance to touch on fully in our turntable topics, and that had to do with the young man Derek Losteter, who is the hacker, K.A. Anonymous, whose work helped to bust the punks in Steubenville, Ohio, who savaged that young girl. It was through Lockstutter's work that he was able to hack their accounts, put out the images that showed what was done to that girl and the two punks who were responsible for her situation. Now, it was bad enough that those kids didn't look at that girl and say, that might be my sister, and look to try to help her out. They went out of their way to perpetuate this, and because the atmosphere was for a football team in a town that didn't have anything else going for it but its stupid fucking high school football team, they protected those kids. Lockstutter's work helped to reveal what happened, and those kids did time. Now, getting a year or two for raping somebody is no laughing matter, because raping somebody is no laughing matter. But the fact that they only stand to do 2 years max, and that this young man Lockstutter could do 10 years for this, is abomination with a capital A. And we will talk about this more on our Saturday show and in future shows, because we're not going to let this go. This young man is at the tip of an iceberg that leads us to talk about lots of other things, not just personal security, but, you know, when does bullying end and stop and end? When will people speak up? And more accountably, when will people who are supposed to take care of these kind of things say these are wrong and legislate the things that will make it right? When those two kids were on trial and they were convicted, the judge was crying like a bitch for them, talking about, oh, their lives are ruined. No, they aren't. They didn't think about that girl whose lives they tried to ruin. But that's the mindset that they were dealing with in this country here. And when a young man sticks his neck out to do something like that, we have to be able to pick him up and not criticize him, because the bottom line is there's going to be more and more people like that who will speak up if they are encouraged to do so, or they will be encouraged to do the right thing because they're able to do so. And Reggie, now that I have you back, come on back and throw something in the pot for your final thought and your shameless plug, please.
Well, first of all, Mike, I want to thank you so much for tirelessly getting this story out, because so many times, brother, we want to do the right thing, but because of money, power, and people look like us that bitch up, that's why we see that we're in the condition we're in today. So we are talking about Brittany Grimes, a young lady from Baylor that's now playing pro basketball. And, once again, we have the women that always are the bow that go in and spread it for other athletes. She recently signed, according to the article, she recently signed a deal with Nike where she's going to be wearing men's clothes. Now, people can laugh and chuckle what she wants, but what I admire about this young lady is that she's saying that I'm going to take my own into my own way of doing things. And I admire her for that, because she was saying, like, hey, why should I sit up in here and be tailor-made? And I wish more and more male athletes would stay and start taking their own destiny in their hands. But again, I'm just so proud of her. So just check that story out about Brittany and her new contract with Nike. Sports Talk every Saturday from 12 to 1 with Professor Tony Cobb, the type of Glenn Brown, and some guy named Cowboy Reggie. And, of course, you know, we just try to support what you do, Mike. So take care. Great job as always.
Thank you, brother. And as Reggie just stated, you can check out Sports Talk, www.wclmonline.com, every Saturday, noon to 1 Eastern Time, Soul of Richmond, Virginia. Anthony's show, you'll hear 9 to 10 Thursday nights on Blog Talk Radio. You can also pick up Anthony's book, We Are the Outcome, on Amazon. You can find it there on Amazon, as well as my first book, Imitation and Life. I think you'll find it entertaining. You can check it out on Amazon. It is now available. It is the first of 3 book projects that will be completed this year, if I can get off my lazy behind. And as my last lick, I just want to throw this in as a thought. I started on this earlier, but I have to make this and remind people of this, because a lot of people sometimes get things skewed on what the real profanity is. Now, those who are serious long-time viewers or listeners of the show, y'all know I use a pejorative every now and then. It's mildly. But there's a big difference between saying motherfucker and what made me say motherfucker in the first place. So it's not the issue of the word being a profanity, it's the acts that make you say these words that are the real profanities. When someone talks about the prison system putting kids at risk to that level, that kids are being arrested for missing school, and they're not just being, given detention and truancy, citations, but they're being put in actual jails. That's the profanity. You're worried about me saying motherfucker, but the real profanity went over your head. And that's the issue that I always have problems with. Our puritanical attitude, especially towards sex, is becoming worse than that. As more and more cases come out of kids being sexually molested and abused and all the other stuff, you're trying to put codes in, like, again, putting an exclamation point instead of an I when you say the word penis or write the word penis. It's a body part. There's nothing profane about it. Like vagina. I don't want to hear vajayjay. It's vagina. It's a body part. There's nothing profane about it. When you create this environment where it's supposed to be profane, you alter the thinking radically negatively in another direction where it does not need to be. And I don't want to hear somebody 5 or 10 years from now, if a kid said penis, that, it's going to fall off, or some sort of antediluvian term that would make them think, don't think about it, don't say it because it's dirty. We have to be real with our kids. We have to be real with ourselves. And you don't get real when you try to disguise the English language because you don't like what the word is. It is about as stupid as you can get. And that in itself is a profanity. We'll see you, just as a programming note, we'll see you Saturday with our Saturday show from 2 to 4. Check out Gary Norris Gray in the Great Leopard Cove afterwards, 4 to 5:30. And also, this Sunday we will be doing another music show for Black Music Month where we will highlight impactful acts and albums that were integral to our music culture. That's going to be Sunday's show from 9 to 11. Until then, I want to thank again my brother Anthony Johnson, Cowboy Reggie, Gary Norris Gray, everybody else from the Soul Tree staff who was on location and on assignment. Until Saturday, kitchen's closed. We're out.